Welcome to another episode of Stronger Than Cancer, the podcast. Today's guest is someone whose journey has touched many. Now, Natalie Hunter is a single mum of two, an advocate, a creator, the author of Breathe Through the Storm, which is a wonderful mindfulness guide that she wrote after being diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer. Now, since that moment in February 2023, Natalie has faced major surgeries, setbacks, and even heartbreaking news of incurability. But what stands out isn't just what she's been through, it's how she's chosen to show up. She's showing up with grace, with strength, and with an unwavering focus on living fully. You're going to love this episode, so let's dive right into it. Welcome to another episode of Stronger Than Cancer, the podcast. We have got an amazing guest today, and I've written some notes actually, and I did mention just before we came into this recording that I wanted to have this really punchy intro for Natalie, as her journey is an amazing one, and I'm really excited for everyone to hear that. So let me get this really punchy intro right for you, Natalie, because I think you deserve it. So today's guest is Natalie Hunter, a single mum living with stage 4 cancer, and through surgeries, setbacks, and a deep mindset work, you've chosen purpose over fear, and you are now helping others do the same. And I'm really looking forward to digging into your journey and sharing your experiences, and I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of that. So Natalie, welcome. How are you?
I'm really good actually at the moment. I'm off on my off chemo week, so feeling good.
It is nice.
Yeah.
It is a nice feeling, isn't it? It's one of those actually. I'm going into surgery on the 29th, so I haven't had chemo since I think the 8th of this month, and it's just, I feel normal.
Yeah.
I don't feel sick. I don't feel unwell. So I really appreciate how you're feeling today. And I'm glad that we've been able to catch this recording on one of your good weeks. So
Yeah.
Natalie, let's jump straight into this. And I want to ask immediately for you, what does being stronger than cancer mean to you?
Yeah, so for me, it's more about sort of thriving in a really bad situation, trying to flip it around without, still being kind to myself and all of that, and allowing all the feelings and things like that, and also choosing the faith over the fear. Fear still
Yeah.
creeps in, still human being, but just choosing that, okay, no, today I choose to be positive and make best of what I can.
Let me ask you then, because and I know that people listening to this go, that's easy to say, right? It's easy to say, you've got to find the joy in the journey. You've got to find the silver linings, which is a phrase I use in almost every podcast or every conversation. But give me an example of what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. So when you wake up, you sort of go, I have this choice of being quite sad and quite fearful of the situation I'm in, or I can choose this. What does this look like? Give me an example of that.
So my morning routine is always gratitude. So I'll wake up and I'll open up my blinds. I look out the window and just go, another day.
Yeah.
And be it rain, hail, or shine, I'm just grateful. And, having children and getting up and getting ready with them. And yeah, I choose to try and keep life as normal as possible. And it's kind of my savior.
Yeah.
One, because you sort of have to as well. But yeah, I think gratitude is a huge thing. That's how I start my day.
Let me ask you this then, because there was something I actually did share some, a little post on Instagram today about, we talk a lot about the positivity and finding obviously the joy in the journey. But the reality is there are some dark moments, and me and you just had a brief discussion about that a second ago. What do you do then when you get up and, you've opened the blinds, you've looked out the window, you've chosen gratitude, and you're going to try and do, but the reality is that the darkness can pull you quite quickly. The sadness can get there. In those moments when you do have that, that sadness, what are the things you do to sort of break that cycle and get yourself out of it?
Yeah, so this is where my mindfulness work comes in. For years, I've practiced meditation, breath work, things like that. So if it is a particular day that I can't pull myself out of that place, I always bring it back to some affirmations, like I'll put my headphones on while I'm getting ready. 2, breath work. I find that can snap you out of something in as little as a minute. If you do, the really deep breaths and things like that, it really can. It shifts you physically from where you were.
Yeah. Okay. And that, by the way, it's I meditated actually meditated a lot before diagnosis, and for some reason it's escaped me during diagnosis. And yet everyone I've spoken to has said the importance of meditation, breath work, mindfulness is absolutely key, and it's something that I absolutely need to bring back into my process, so I can understand, having the experience before, why that would be really useful. I've got a myriad of questions for you, Natalie, but what I want to do is let's start off with give an idea about your journey so far. So let's talk about, the diagnosis, what you've been through, and let's get that story, and then let's pull out the information from there. So talk to us about the journey that you've been on so far.
Yeah, so well, back 2023, diagnosis day, February 15th. It's a date, we never forget, is it?
That's all right.
And yeah, I was rushed to hospital with pain, and bowel cancer was not on my radar, not in the family. I actually knew nothing about it. And, so symptoms and things just weren't in my brain. So I just thought I'd eaten something. Anyway, ends up I'm in the emergency room, and they've rushed me through to CT. And then within 20 minutes, the doctors come out and diagnose me. So, and I just went into this world of, it was literally, I was on another planet, just swirling around. And then from then on, within 24 hours, I had to have the emergency surgery to remove the main tumour in my sigmoid, and I was left with a stoma. And then after that 3 weeks, I was then having chemotherapy. So port implanted a few days before, and then, yeah, within 3 weeks.
Your journey is very similar to mine, and I remember, you described it wonderfully there, as you sort of that moment where that word cancer appears for the first time. So the doctor's got you in that room and he's having the conversation, and you're like, oh, he's going to tell me what's wrong with me. But then that word pops up, and it's almost like everything goes silent, and every word after that disappears. So the mouth was moving, but the noise wasn't coming out. I was like,
Yeah.
no, you just said cancer, and that's really where I am right now. I haven't moved on from anything else. It was kind of it was a strange feeling. We've had conversation before, and you mentioned I think you said there was a moment where everything shifted for you. So everything's happened really quickly, right? And I think a lot of people resonate with this. You've had the diagnosis, you have had a portacath put in almost immediately. I think you just said you had the surgery to remove the primary
In
almost
24 hours.
immediately, within 24 hours,
Yeah.
and then obviously then straight into chemo within 3 weeks, right? So that is a whirlwind change for anybody, where suddenly your life goes from being this to being this. But you said there was a moment in sort of maybe the emergency room or somewhere where everything shifted, and you sort of had to ground yourself back into reality again. How did you take yourself from feeling like you were on another planet, and everything was all this stuff's whirlwind happening, and you've got your 2 children, you've got your life, you are a single parent, and how did you ground yourself? How did you bring your back self to reality to go, shit, I've got to deal with this?
Well, I think the doctor could see what was happening in my mind. And I sat there just frozen, really. And he sent a social worker in. He said, I'm going to send a social worker in. And to this day, I can't tell you the conversation with the social worker at all.
Yeah.
But at this point, I was thinking to myself, I can't even tell my family. I don't want to tell them. It's going to bring them down and la la la. But whatever the social worker said to me grounded me, even though I don't remember a thing. And it was just like, okay, I'm back in my body, and now I can make the phone calls and tell everyone the bad news. So there wasn't anything in particular in that moment, but obviously something that the social worker, and
Yeah,
obviously
just
my brain had processed. And then I went, okay.
and it's weird, isn't it? Because you said you obviously came back, you were grounded, and you don't know what that was, but thankfully it happened, because I think for many of us we could just float off on that other planet for quite some time. What did then? And we'll talk about the phone calls as well, because I'm really interested to understand how you did that. Certainly, with your 2 children, who you said are teenagers, and I've had this discussion with plenty of people before. But tell me, what did those first few days teach you? Because we speak a lot about fear and control. We had that conversation a second ago about fear and the positivity. But what did those first few days teach you about fear and control, and how did you go through that process?
Well, I think it's all still, you do still feel so numb, But learning how to just step out of yourself and making those phone calls. I think being such an independent person too, I never wanted to put my troubles on other people. But what I did learn in that process of opening up and sharing and telling people is that people are there and they want to help, and they, oh my gosh, it was actually incredible.
Mm.
The inflooding of help, it was incredible. But again, I would revert back to, okay, just my breath work one. I was in hospital anyway, but I'd have my headphones on. I was in hospital for a good week post surgery. So I had the time to meditate, breath
Yeah.
work, speak to a lot of people. I had the social workers come in again, and yeah.
Do you think that would have been different, Natalie, if because it was a 3 week period, and you said something there that just made me think maybe you're thankful that you had to stay in hospital at the very beginning for a little period because it meant you didn't get that influx of visitors to your house, and even
Yeah,
though that support is we're grateful for the support, and the
yeah,
love that you feel during this process is overwhelming. I mean, I've described it as it's a new level of love that you've and support that you've never felt before, but it's
yeah.
a shame that you only feel it when you go through trauma. So you
Mm.
kind of want everyone to feel that love and that level of love and support, but you know that it really only comes with trauma, so you don't want people to feel it because it comes with
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
sadness
right.
as well.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
do you think it would have been different had they said, look, it's cancer, and go home. We're gonna because that's what I had cancer. I was told I had cancer, then I went home and had to tell the family immediately. So I kind of only had a car journey to sort of figure that
Yeah.
out, because they all knew I was going in for a colonoscopy,
Mhm.
and they called my wife immediately. So do you think that do you think that helped you having that time? There's a point to my question. You had a bit of time to separate yourself from everyone and everything. Do you
Yeah,
think that helped?
I do actually. And I think because I was straight in for surgery, so people were really mindful of coming in as well.
Yeah.
So it did give me that time to really process it, and then coming out of I mean, I had my key people with me, but then coming out of surgery, getting over the GA and all of that, and definitely having that time and space. I had a nice private room. It did help. And I did have my kids come to visit, but I hadn't told them at this point. Because I wanted my cancer plan first. I just said I had something in my bowel that had to be removed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am grateful that I had that time, because I think if I was just sent home, it it would have been probably a bit harder to deal with, I think.
Yeah, and the reason I asked the question is because I mean my family, once I mentioned the C word, the cancer word, and immediately my children, my older children that understood, my ex-wife, my wife, and even sort of close family around sort of said, tell us everything, don't hold anything back, and don't lie to us, right? They wanted to be on the journey, but I wanted to, for any listener that is going through this and is wondering, how to approach this if they're in the early stages, it's really good advice to sort of say, don't feel guilty for taking a step back and taking some time. Don't feel guilty for, sort of going, I need to keep this to myself for a very short period of time because I need to work out my journey and my plan and how I'm going to take them on it. So I think that's really, again, it was circumstantial that you had that, but I think looking back at it, you probably sound like you're probably grateful of having that moment where you could put that cancer plan in place. So
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice. Now, there was this, we talked about mindset after the word, because I think at this point you weren't aware that it had spread to the lungs. Is that correct? We
Yeah,
were
at
only
that
aware.
point it hadn't. So
Okay.
on diagnosis, literally the words were, you have bowel cancer and it's spread to your liver. The ER doctor couldn't really give me any other information. It wasn't until I had my appointments with the oncologists and whatnot the following week, once I was discharged from hospital after surgery.
Yeah.
So the lungs, it hadn't spread to the lungs. I thought I was clear for 10 months. So I had all of 2023 was treatment, and then two major liver resections. Um, and they got all the cancer. So I was meant to have another 6 cycles of the Volfox, but I ended up really sick after the second liver resection. So I was actually in hospital for another 3 months. I was in and
Wow.
out. I'd go home for a couple of days and then I'd have a roaring temperature. So I'd end up back in hospital for another week. Yeah. So from then on, it was touch and go. And the oncologist was sort of like, I don't think you really need the other 6 cycles because you're clear, your bloods are 0. Yeah. So
Let me ask you a question then, because at that point, do you look back at that, and I'm trying to not, I don't want to bring, I'm trying not to be controversial, but the conversation there was, I don't think you need the additional 6 because you're all clear. Yet that was your plan originally.
mm,
Is there a point where you look back at that and go, and we never go back and wish different things, but do you look back at that moment and go,
I know what
I
you're going
probably
to say.
should have had the 6?
Absolutely. It was so
What
what
was your gut at the time as well? Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to, the preface of that question is, what was your gut telling you at the time? Did you agree with that, or was
I
there,
did. And
yeah,
it,
okay.
it was because it wasn't just like, I don't think you need it. It was, they took it to the board of oncologists and they all discussed my
Right.
situation. And it had been over the window of where it would be beneficial because I was in hospital for an extra 3 months.
Yeah.
And they said, you've sort of passed that window. Your bloods are 0, your scans are great. So I was going, yay, no more chemo.
Yeah, of course. And look, I think if I was given a glimmer of you don't need any more chemo, I'd be like, yeah, take that. So I can understand at that point.
Yeah.
How long then after that did you find out that actually it's spread to lung? So we've got the clear now. We're not doing chemo. We're feeling good. What was the next
Okay,
part of that
so
journey?
what happened? I then was, my three monthly checks. It was in early September, and there had been some changes on my lungs, and I'd had the oncologist say, "Look, I want you to have your stoma reversal," which was early October. So I had it must have been mid-September actually, had that scan with the lungs, with the PET scan. And then I had my stoma reversal. And while I was in hospital with the stoma reversal in October last year, so 2024, I kept probing all the doctors and nurses in there. What are my scan results? What are my scan results? Oh, hang on, we'll just go and try and find out. And then someone would come back in and go, oh, you need to see your oncologist. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because I've had results delivered. Oh, yeah, you're all good. It's fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had to wait for the oncologist, which was 10 days post stoma reversal. And then that's when he said, look, I want I'm so glad we went ahead with the stoma reversal because it's all about quality of life for you now. You didn't need that anymore. I had it for 18 months and whatnot. But he said, so what we've got to do now is maintain your life, basically.
Yeah.
And start chemo again. So they actually wanted me on to go on Folfuri. And I said, I want to go. I want to do that other 6 of
The
Folfox again.
6th. Yeah.
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 And they're so happy with it because the tumors are shrinking rapidly that they're actually going to do another 6, which I start tomorrow. And then we'll go on what they call maintenance chemo. So from now,
Yes.
I'm meant to be on the maintenance chemo for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah, and that what an amazing statement, right? I'm going to be on maintenance chemo for the rest of my life. And there's something you said there, and again, I'm thinking of all these questions, and I'm going to take you back a bit further in a second. But there was something you said there around they wanted you to go on full fury, which
Mm.
I've heard a lot about, and a lot of it is that it's I'm going to use the word more aggressive than full folks. I haven't heard too much about it being, the side effects are apparently maybe a bit worse. And
Mm.
I'm not trying to scare people here. I'm saying that Full Fury does its job and it does what it's supposed to do. But was there a reason why you said, I want to do the 6 of the full folks that I should have done before I do this?
Yeah, because I'd had such good results in even just after 4 cycles back in the first lot, my tumors had shrunk by over half. So I thought,
Yeah.
let's just give it a crack. And if it's not working, then we'll take the next step. But in
Yeah.
this instance, after 4 or 5 cycles, I've got 4 tumors in my lungs. The biggest one has shrunk by 75%.
That's
Just
amazing.
so, yeah, yeah. So, and I mean, they're only really little anyway. So, because we got them so early because of our 3 monthly checks. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's working, it's doing its job. Who knows if it'll completely get rid of them, but they're not obstructing anything. You know, you hear of people that it pushes on things and they're in areas that it's, I would not know I have them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that because that really aligns with everything that we've all the conversations that I've had. There's a couple of things to pull out of that again, and I just want the listeners to be aware of this because the first thing is you trusted your instincts, right? So
Mm.
that's the very first thing. And what that means is that you took control. So you trusted your instinct. You sort of went, no, hold on, I had a really good response to this the first time round, and I want that again. I don't want this unknown. I want to go back to this. So you trusted your instinct. And not only that, you took control. You know, your oncologists and the team were doing, you know, what again, they were doing the right thing by saying, here's what we think you should do. But you took control by saying, well, actually, I want to do this. And I think the message there is again, we had this in the second episode of Nina, which was you are in control of your journey.
Mhm.
The oncologist will give you recommendations, will give you advice, but at the end of the day, the decision is yours. You can
That's
do
right.
what you choose to do. Have chemo, don't have it, have this chemo, have that chemo, whatever it might be, but you are in full control. So again, that's it kind of aligns with everything that has been said so far with all the conversations that I've had with everyone. Natalie, if you don't mind, because we went through, and your journey is huge. I'm really looking at the notes, and I don't even think we've covered half of what you sort of went
It's
through during that
okay.
time. But I think that there's something that I did ask. I've asked a number of, on all episodes was that conversation with the kids, right? So they're teenagers. Sorry, how old are they at the moment?
So 13 and 16 now. So my daughter was only 11 at the time. And
11.
my
Yeah.
son was, oh yeah, 14.
Yeah.
Just,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
No.
How was that conversation? Because that was the hardest one for me. I mean, I
Mm.
essentially gathered my closest, my ex-wife was there, my children was there, my wife was there. And, it was, and I almost sort of stood in front of them like I was doing this big speech. It was quite surreal, but I didn't know how to do it. I was like, oh, how do I sit on the chair? Do I look cool? Do I look sad? I had no idea. I almost flipped the chair around and put my cap backwards to try and act like
Yeah.
it wasn't bothering me. But how did that go for you? Like, how did you approach that? And
Yeah.
what was their response like?
Well, I had told all the family. It was just the kids that I thought I need all my information because they're going to ask questions. And I didn't want to go, oh, I don't know when chemo is going to start, or I don't know how many cycles, or, I wanted to have all the information. So this was literally days before I was about to start chemo. And I pulled them into my room and sat them on the bed and hugged them, and they were going, what's happening? And I just said, that thing that was in my stomach that I had to have the surgery for, it was cancer. And my daughter completely broke down, and my son just sort of froze. And then my daughter, and I had been advised by my counselor as well that that age group, like 11 to 13, they're very much, it's their world and how it's going to affect them. So straight away she was going, what about my swimming? And what about this? How is it going to affect her? And then my son's going, oh my God, but mum's got cancer. So it was actually really funny. But it was, well, not funny, but it was
No, I get it. No, I
interesting to
understand.
see the
Yeah.
difference in the age, how they responded. But then in the end, I said, don't worry, I'm going to, give everything I've got to this, and, we'll do it together. And, it's going to be some hard times, and we're going to need the family around. And then from then on, actually, they've been amazing. So it was getting the words out,
Mm.
but once they were out, it was
They were
like,
there.
okay, yeah, I can do
What
it.
what happened on a day-to-day basis? And I'm asking actually for myself because I've got five children. And what's actually so I have five children at that point would have been so they're right now they're 4, 6. I've got two boys that are 16, and I've got a daughter who's 22. So the 22-year-old, an amazing person, wonderful daughter, like myself, quite emotional. So responds to things quite emotionally. What I found really interesting was with my two boys, because it's funny when you say like sort of those different responses from your
Yeah.
daughter and your son, was I've got twin boys, and you sort of go, well, that means they might respond the same. One got very emotional and sort of went into his room and sort of, there was probably, there were tears. The other went into his room and put his headset on and started to play PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and immediately went, okay, that's how he's handling that. I need to match that energy and match that response. I
Yeah.
can't go in with the same emotion that I'm going to go into Bailey's room, and I'm going to sit with Bailey. We're going to have that conversation. We're just going to hug it out, basically.
Yeah.
Ryan doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to hug it out. He doesn't want the emotion to go with it. He wants to tough it out and almost ignore it, which is what my 22-year-old did. They sort of went, you don't look sick. You're not presenting as unwell. You're still annoying. And therefore, we don't believe you have it. And until that point, we're just going to dismiss it, which actually I think is a wonderful response. But it is. And the reason why I mentioned that, because it did come up before, was, again, for any listener that's new to the podcast, you tailor your response. Tailor your response not only to the age group that you're working on, but tailor it to the personality and the emotion. And this is the second time this has come up in conversation, which means it probably is very wise advice.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question there. What does day-to-day look like, right? So, we wake up, we open the blinds, we do our gratitude.
Yeah.
Is cancer a conversation in your household on a daily basis? Or
It
because you
is.
said you live your normal life,
Yeah.
do you have conversations daily or not? What does that look
Well,
like?
not so much now. I think in that first sort of 12 months, because there was so much treatment, there was so many surgeries, and my family had literally moved in to help because I had all these surgeries. So life was very different. But now I've incorporated it really well into life. So I'll leave in the morning and go, Mum's off for chemo, see you later.
Yeah.
And like you said before, because we present well, we don't look sick. It's okay for them. I think if, sadly, lost my hair or, or really, really sick from the chemo. I mean, I'm pretty resilient. There's days that I'm not well, but I can push through it for the kids. And I just do that because I have to as well. I don't really have a choice, but
Yeah.
I think really because we do look well.
Yeah.
That really makes a difference, I think, for the kids. They're like, oh, Mum's okay because she looks okay.
It's not, yeah, that's right. And it's, and I only asked that question because, and I'm sure listeners will resonate. It's a strange one because there are days go by where we don't talk about it. And then I often sit back and think to myself, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? And I don't know the answer, is the honest truth, because more recently, certainly in the last, even just in the last 48 hours, I've been, I don't know if it's, I don't know if I'm being selfish, or I've kind of looked at it going, I don't know if we're prepared for the worst. We've been so positive and been so, I'm going to use the word dismissive of the fact that I've got this, what we're calling incurable bowel cancer that's spread to the liver. Those you look at the stats, you go, yeah, survival rate's 22 months. I'm absolutely positive I'll smash those stats out, but I don't know if I prepared myself or my family for the worst. What happens if the treatment stops? So it's weird that we don't talk about it, but every now and again I sit there going, should we be? And the reality is I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. I'm hoping.
And that's it. It's honestly week by week or day by day, whatever. And you as long as they're along the journey with you and you keep them updated, then that's all we can do. I think it's, oh no, you can tell them, okay, their tumors are growing and this, but you can only sort of deal with it with the information you get at the time as well, because nobody has a crystal ball. And my oncologist said to me, I got the time frame, but he said, this is just information. It's not a crystal ball. You can do with that what you will. You can Google it. The kids have Googled it, it's not a great outcome, but then there's people completely exceeding it. And who's to say, we're not that. So it's
that's right.
Just a day-to-day, week-to-week,
scan
by scan thing, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And that's kind of how we're doing it now. We sort of just go day by day. And I think now even though I was diagnosed on much like you, remember the day it was the 4th of December of 2024, and you just remember every part of that day. So I'm relatively new on my journey, and already my family can see when I'm maybe on a bit of a down, a bit of a quiet. And I've been very lucky that my entire family have just matched my energy. My energy is, I've got dark humor about it. We make inappropriate jokes that everybody else goes, oh, certainly me and my brother-in-laws, they've said some terrible things that are, just based on dark humor and very funny, which I love because that's my energy. That's what I like to do. I just like to sort of poke fun at it. And then other people will match my energy. If I'm a bit down, they'll look at that and go, maybe
Yeah.
today's a bit more of emotional support, which I think, again, whether you're on, for those that are, again, listening and that might not be on the cancer journey, but are supporters or family, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice we can sort of give based on our experiences, match the energy. It's almost like you say to people, read the room, right? Read
It's
the room,
perfect advice.
match the
Yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
because if I'm up and I'm upbeat and you coming down and low, it's just not going to work for me. I'm
Yeah.
going to walk away from you, which it'll look very rude, but I'm just going to turn my back because I
Yeah.
don't need that energy. But there
Yeah.
will be days where I do need that emotional support. Natalie, I wanted to ask this. You said something there a second ago, which was you're very resilient, and I can
Mm.
see that. And again, looking through all the notes, and we're going to touch on some of those things at the moment. You're very resilient, but and I want to. And I hope you don't mind me taking this there. I did ask earlier, you're a single parent as well. You're a single parent of two. And, I guess that would mean that you've got to be even more resilient, even stronger. And, so if you don't mind, I'd just love to unpack that a little bit, because there are, single parents. It's not just single mothers, there's single fathers out there that are going through this. What are you doing on a daily basis to stay strong? I think, because we talked about it very briefly before we started recording.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how do you do that? I know you're not alone, but
Yeah.
there are moments where you will be. There are moments where you're going to
Yeah.
be on your own as a single parent. How do
Exactly.
you handle that?
I guess preparation is key. So I prepare for the week of chemo, dinners, getting down to the practical things, um, dinners and things like that. So I don't have to do the cooking. Mind you, friends help out with that as well. And there's always, Uber Eats, but just the day-to-day things like that, preparation is key. But in those quiet sort of moments, and like you said, I'm not alone. I have help when I ask for it, but when you are alone at night,
Yeah,
kids have gone to bed, that is when you sort of sink into, oh my gosh, I've got no one here going, I've got your back, or
yeah,
just that sort of thing. So that's when I do pull on a lot of my mind work stuff, meditation. It's not avoiding it, it's just getting through it
yeah,
when I do that. So I have these moments going, gosh, am I in denial? Like, am I that toxic positive person? But no, it's not. It's just that's how I get through that time
yeah,
when I
yeah.
am
You and
like that.
and I praise you for that, because I couldn't imagine doing this journey without my wife. And to be honest with you, I'm going to say it, it'll sound very silly, but I couldn't imagine doing it without my ex-wife. I have a wonderful relationship with my ex-wife still, but my best friend, we've been in each other's lives since I was 17. So to have her, to have my wife, to have all of those families, but certainly to have my wife here all the time, I just don't know if I could do that. And I just wanted to praise your mental strength, because it's not just the physical aspect of preparing for the week, it's the mental strength of having to get through that in those
Yeah.
times. And I think you've given some wonderful advice in, if you're on your own, preparation is key.
Mm.
But but when you're not preparing, it's the mental strength that you need. You have to sit within yourself. And I think breath work is amazing. I think meditation is amazing. I'm also a big advocate for listening to music. I know that music can be quite, depending on the song, can
Yeah.
take you to places that you don't want to go. But if you listen to the right songs at the right time, it can really give you a lift. And the other thing, obviously, is making sure that you're exercising and moving and doing all those wonderful things that we know are,
That's a
sort
big
of,
thing. Yeah.
that really help us. But I will say this though, whether you are part of, whether you know me through this podcast, whether you know Natalie through the work that she does, or the wellness group, which is the movement Wellness After Diagnosis, you're actually not alone. There are so many people that are willing, that don't know you, that are willing to step up and just be an ear to listen, be a shoulder to cry on, just be someone for a coffee. So please reach out. Don't be alone. Natalie, I wanted to again. I'm going to touch upon some of the work that you've done with Breathe Through the Storm, because I think you've talked a lot throughout this around breathwork meditation, which means it's obviously really important to you. But I did want to ask you though, before we get into that, From where you were before diagnosis to now, what are the major changes that you've made for yourself on a daily basis that are outside sort of the breath work and the meditation? What are the changes that you've made to your everyday life?
So I cut out all sugar, but I now realize, no, I want to enjoy some little things. So that's like a physical thing. Exercise I have amped up only recently because I've had that many surgeries that my body is only allowing me to exercise properly now. And yeah, that's kind of pretty much it really. It's more just, it really is more a mental game for me. That's what I'm finding it. It's
Right.
yeah,
The
yeah.
physical stuff's quite easy, right? It's easy to, well,
Yeah.
I say that I've done I've done no exercise since diagnosis. I've gone from being this individual that went to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, trained with my football team, played football on a Saturday, and usually played 90 minutes to doing zero. And
Yeah.
I don't say that. I say it with a smile on my face because I'm almost kicking myself because every conversation I've had has been exercise is vital, right? So we've got to get out for walks. And I mean, I move a lot. I've got 5 kids. I play a lot of golf with my
Yeah.
sons, and
Yeah.
I'm chasing 2 kids around the house constantly. But there's actually, again, if we can pull something out of the changes that everybody makes in their life when they are diagnosed, it comes down to positivity, exercise, and food, right? Those are the
Mhm.
things. And how hard is it to give up the sugar? Like
Very.
I'm struggling. Like I'm
It's
just sitting there going, I don't want to eat that bag of party mix or those snakes, but I know I'm going to, even though I know that it could have a really significant impact on me at this stage of my life. And yet I found it really difficult. So that's
Mhm.
something I'm working on at the moment. I mean, was there anything that you did? Because you said now you treat yourself every now and again, but was there something you did back then where you went, this is how I'm going to avoid sugar?
Yeah. So the biggest thing was also alcohol as well. Not that I was, I was a social drinker. I'd have wines with friends or whatever. But yeah, I was actually really, really disciplined and it was
Really?
quite
Yeah.
easy.
You've
Yeah.
got a really strong mindset. I can see that. Everything for you is in the mindset. I can hear it in your
Yeah.
voice and the way you tell your story. You're obviously very strong. I am, I'm weak. I'm like, no, this chocolate biscuit is too tasty and I'm eating it right now.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm sort of
yeah.
a bit like that now, but as I've gone along the diagnosis and the process in the last 12 months and now the new diagnosis, it's kind of like, well, okay, well, life is also for, enjoying
Got to enjoy it. Yeah.
and
It's weird, isn't it? Because we used to say everything in moderation is okay, but you suddenly go, actually, when you get diagnosis, no, sugar's not okay. You've got to
yeah,
exercise, and you can't do that. I mean, I was that type of individual that yes, I was training and exercising, but 3 o'clock every afternoon, I would drink a can of V and eat a Mars bar
yeah,
every day. It was just my habit. It was that that hump at work. You'd go, right, what do I do now at 3 o'clock to get me to 5:30? Oh,
mm,
it's the can of V. And I look back on that with nothing but regret, right? So I look at that going, that's not the lifestyle. So I haven't done that, but I'm still trying to find that balance between doing the right thing and doing the thing that just is easy and comfortable. I guess the only advice we can give is that you try and find that balance. Just
yeah,
don't, and also don't punish yourself when you do fall off. I'm going to call it the sugar wagon, right?
exactly.
When you
Got to be
smash
kind
that
to
bag of
yourself.
chips, got to be
Yeah,
kind.
yeah,
Alcohol was quite easy though. I did find it easy to. So I was always that individual that went 3, 4 months without drinking because I was training hard and wanted to
yeah.
achieve something, whether it be weight loss or fitness. So that was quite easy for me. But I could understand why people would struggle with that as well. I want to do 2 things here, Natalie, because I did want to talk about Breathe Through the Storm, but before I do that, I thought what we might do is we'd close out with the traditional Stronger Than Cancer, the podcast questions.
Mhm.
So let's close out and then we'll go on to your book because I want to talk about that. If you could go back and talk to yourself on the day you were diagnosed, what would you say to yourself if you could go back and have that conversation?
So I would say this is going to be the hardest time of your life, but you're going to get through it. And just remain focused and keep the love around. And yeah,
I think and I don't want to, and I love this question, but I don't want to answer. And I think for you, it was, you are, it feels like you're just so much stronger than you know. Like I'm getting that, I just get that vibe from you. Just get this
yeah,
sense of you are just a lot stronger than even this episode is going to probably portray. I think you've done a wonderful job of just, it feels very business as usual. Yeah, I can, the conversation, I've got the visual in front of me, which some people might not have on Spotify or Apple, but you just kind of ooze this, you just got this strength within you. And I think that's something, I mean,
It's
maybe that I
actually
would say that to
grown as
myself.
I've gone along as well, the strength. I think, one adversity builds your strength, and then another one, and it builds your strength again, and you just keep riding that
You
wave.
just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that cancer couldn't take away from you?
Well, it has taken away a lot, but 20-year career in what I was doing, it was a job that I needed to not be sick for, so I had to give that away. But it can't take away my love for life, and it can't take away the love for my children or my family, my loved ones, and the joy. Like, I still find joy in every day. So it just, yeah, it can't take away that.
I love that. And again, it feels like we're sort of repeating ourselves on each episode, but that finding that joy in the journey,
It's
it
it's
makes it so much easier.
yeah.
It really does. And I also, look, I'm an advocate for the fact that finding the joy and finding the silver linings is actually part of the treatment. It
Mm,
really is.
it is.
I'm in no doubt of that. I really am, which is why I've taken my approach to this journey, because I don't want to give what I've got now a bigger platform. I'm sort of removing that platform by going, I'm just not going to give you the life or the breath.
Mm.
I'm going to deal with it this way. What advice would you give someone at the beginning of their journey? If they starting today, what advice would you give them?
Definitely just take it day by day. And it's, you have this grand scheme. This is how I worked anyway. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'll get to that destination. But that destination, the goalposts move all the time. And it's just it is literally just day by day. Rely on people around you. If you're someone like me, just swallow that pride and then allow the help. And it's amazing what comes flooding in around that. But it it literally is just a day by day, week by week process.
Yeah.
And remain as positive as you can, which annoys some people to hear that as well. But you can't be, you can't sink too often. You have
Yeah.
to allow those feelings, because feeling is healing. But yeah,
I love that. I don't know if I've heard that phrase before. Feeling is healing.
yeah. Well, it's a part, my psychologist actually told me that. So she's very much on, you need to allow your feelings to come up. And when they do come up, you have to feel it. And because that is a part of the healing journey.
Yeah, I've not heard it put that way. I love that, and that would be
Mm.
something that, and that's just why I love these episodes, because it's almost like I keep describing it as, I feel like the kid at school who's copying somebody else's homework, because I'm getting the opportunity to have all these wonderful conversations with people that are much further ahead in their journey, and it's almost like you've done all the research for me. You're giving me all this wisdom and knowledge. So when I hear things like that, feeling is healing, it resonates and it sticks, and I get to walk away with that and figure
Mm.
that out and bring that into my everyday life. And I'm hoping that the listeners are hearing this and going, I love that. I love that it's okay to feel
Mm.
that way, because it's part of my healing process.
Yeah.
Okay, last one before we talk about Breathe Through the Storm. What are your three non-negotiables, your three daily must-dos?
Daily must to hug my children,
Yeah.
connect with them in one way or another. And my daily gratitude is the other one. And then finding something that makes me feel alive each day. So it can be as simple as exercise, going for a walk, or breath work. That really makes me feel alive. It just does something to my brain. Yeah, so those sorts of things, something definitely to
Well,
make me feel alive each day.
random question, just because when you say makes me feel alive, I sort of see this big grand thing, and then it's weird because we then go, yeah, but just a simple walk can make you feel that.
Exactly.
What's the most, and there might not be an answer to this because it might just be those, but is there something that you've done that's quite extreme to make you feel that buzz of life? I mean, have you been bungee jumping? Have you jumped out of a plane? What have you done any of these things?
I won't jump out of a plane. I won't.
Right, okay, fair enough.
But I have plans to go in a hot air balloon.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And what have I done? I'm doing, things like making sure I get to the concert I want to go to, or,
Okay, yeah,
things like that.
yeah. Things that you might sometimes go, you know what, I miss it this time round. and
Yeah.
I'll catch a different concert or a different show. It might not be with the same artist, but it's now more prevalent of going, no, I'm going to go and see them now. I'm going to do this
Yeah.
now. All
Yeah.
right, wonderful. Natalie, you've also sent me. You did send me a copy of "Breathe Through the Storm," which, by the way, I think is a wonderful title because that's where we are, and that's, we often hear something similar to that. But first of all, tell me about the book and also just the process that you went through writing it. Was it something that you did to help yourself, or was it ultimately because you knew it would help others? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So a bit of both. So again, when I first got diagnosed, I was in search for something like that. So, there were huge, big, thick books out there that you could sit and read, and but I just wanted this little guide of something that I could, just flip through daily and
Yeah.
turn to daily. And so, I mean, this happened over months, and it was sort of more late last year that I got right into it. I just wanted a guide to one with some little meditation techniques, some breathwork techniques, some positive affirmations, some journaling techniques, some journal prompts. But it's all just compact in 29 pages, a little hint of my story in there. And yeah, it's the guide I wish I had when I was first diagnosed. Just like I said, you can have it on your bedside. It's PDF, laptop or whatever, you can print it off, but just have it next to you, refer to it daily or not, refer to it
Yeah.
weekly. Yeah, yeah. So
I
I
like
just,
that. I like that. See, I'm that person. I'm that guy. I'm that guy that goes, no, no, just give me a really simple guide, a really simple daily, here, do this number one, do this number two, do this number three. Or as much as I do love reading and learning to a certain degree, I'm not great at that. I'm not great at reading these big, I've got Eckhart Tolle books, I've got them all, but I get lost in them sometimes. So I need people to really simplify
yeah.
that. So I love that. Where can people get a copy of that?
Yeah, so the people can just email me. But what I was going to say is if people are listening and they'd like it, then we can just flick it through to them as a little gift. I just wanted
Awesome.
to give back to the community too, because it's just what I wish I had in the beginning. So I have flicked it off to a few people, but yeah, I want to give it as a gift for people.
Well, let's do that then. So because and I love that because that's the reason why I'm doing this podcast. It's just my way of helping people as much as I possibly can and putting purpose and meaning into my journey. And I think this is a great work of you sort of putting purpose and meaning into yours. For people that are listening, I had a copy of it, and it's breath work that is great for calming the anxiety. It's visualization as well. So it's the ability to picture that
Visualization.
healing process and
Yeah,
that bringing peace through visualization.
yeah,
But you also give meditation techniques. There's a gratitude journaling part of that and how you do that, and I guess how to self-soothe in those moments of fear, and maybe even for those single parents, self-soothe in those moments where you might be feeling a little lost or on your own. But I think the one thing that I got out of that was that it was just a reminder that joy and pain can exist together. Like
yeah,
yeah, I think that's that part of that healing is feeling, because you
yeah.
might feel some sadness. So what I'll do is I will work out a way that I can maybe get your contact details to anyone that's listening to this, to anyone that wants it. It might be a link in the bio, whatever that looks like. Maybe we can even put a link to where we can download it. We'll figure something out for anyone that wants a copy of that PDF. Natalie, we are at the end, and I have got, you'll see here right in front of me, 4 pieces of paper. There are a ton of questions that I didn't get to ask you purely on the basis that the podcast world says that 40 to 45 minutes is a great time. I often need 2 hours to have these conversations, but you have been a wonderful guest. I think that you typify everything that this podcast is all about. It's about being stronger than cancer. It's about finding purpose, joy, silver linings in the journey. And even though we didn't get to cover everything I wanted to, I think you certainly articulated that you are doing that on a daily basis, and you're showing up every single day with a grace that I think is wonderful. So thank you so much for being a guest, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Another wonderful episode with someone who, again, I believe is the epitome of strength and the sort of the reminder that the way to go through this journey and the way to manage this is to find the joy, to remember that we said at the end, pain and happiness and pain and joy can go hand in hand, and we have to remember that on this journey. I love the way as well that Natalie just keeps it really simple. I've had some wonderful conversations and we've gone very deep into some of the content. And with Natalie, I didn't feel like we had to go too deep to get the message, to understand how she's showing up on a daily basis. She articulates it in such a simple way that I found it really easy to walk away with insights. And some of those for me were, first of all, strength is built in the storm. It's not before it, right? I'm under no illusion that Natalie didn't come into this journey with an unshakable resilience. I get the feeling that she would have been resilient before, but a lot of that resilience, a lot of that strength was forged during the chaos. And the reason why I found that to be really insightful was that you will feel weak at some point. I can assure you of that. There are times where you just sit there going, I can't do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm scared. All of these things, and you'll feel that. But it's during those moments that you will gain the strength that you need to get through. It's at those weak points. It's at those down times when you actually learn more about yourself than you do when you're just off and doing normal, happy things. Embrace the chaos, embrace the storm, and know that it's teaching you something and you are going to come out of it a lot stronger than how you went into it. The other thing that I think was important that we haven't probably touched upon in other episodes, but should really, is that you are allowed to pause before you share. And I think that, again, don't feel guilty for not sharing, I think is the best way to describe that. Make sure that you understand, make sure you understand that you can take some time. This is your journey. This is your diagnosis. And yes, you will take people along on that journey and people will be there for you. And often I say to my wife, this is your journey as well. But the reality is at the very beginning, when you need to, you can make this your own journey. You can be a little bit selfish and go, I need time to put my story, journey, my plan together, and then I'll share it. So yeah, you're allowed to pause before you share. Give yourself permission to take a breath and create a plan and then share if you need to. And I guess the final one is that you're in control even when it feels like you're not. And I think a good example of that was when Natalie was offered Full Fury as an option, but she was steadfast in the fact that Full Fox had done the job the first time round, and therefore she wanted to continue that process. So again, she trusted her gut, she trusted her instinct, and she used her voice. It's her treatment plan and she can change it as she will. So for anyone out there that's going through that, where they might be a little confused or they're a little bit worried about pushing back, don't be. This is your journey. You have to advocate for yourself and you have to push the boundaries really and challenge your oncologist and challenge your medical team. I have nothing but respect for my oncologist, nothing but respect for my team that is working with me and helping me through this. But every now and again, I ask hard questions and I push back, and sometimes I get the response I want, and sometimes I feel they've come up with a viable reason why their decision or their choice is better than mine. But have that conversation, be in control and take control of your journey. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I did. Again, as I said, Natalie is a wonderful person, full of strength, joy and grace, and I hope you all take something away from it.